always say yes. One illustration of this was a meeting that occurred in Almaty, then the capital of Kazakhstan, and it regarded a plan to build one of these pipelines out. And at the meeting were the energy minister of Russia, Kazakhstan, Oman, and those two privateers, John Deuss and Jim Giffen. And the Russian, Yuri Shafronik, was angrier and angrier as this meeting progressed, as he wasn't getting his way from the Kazakh side. And at one point, he says to the Kazakh oil minister, "Do you mind if I borrow your mobile phone?" Sure. So he takes that mobile phone and he disappears into a corner and has this muffled conversation. Returns to the table. The meeting breaks up after a short time for the day, and the Kazakhs return to their office, where they found out what this phone call was all about, because there on the fax machine was a piece of paper that said, "Freak storm on the Black Sea. All oil shipments postponed until further notice." What does it mean? Don't mess with Russia. The United States decided in 1996 that it was going to try to weaken this iron umbilical cord, and the way it happened was at another meeting in Washington. Strobe Talbot was there, Sheila Heslin was there, and a bunch of other of these deputy secretaries. And Talbot, as usual, was resisting the idea, Heslin's idea, of getting behind these states, helping them in their situation. So she took out a blank piece of paper. And on this piece of paper, she drew Central Asia and the Caucasus. And what you could see when you drew that, when she drew it, is what you're looking at now. That all surrounding the whole region were countries of primary American strategic interest. Iran to the south, China to the east, and Russia to the north. Heslin argued that this land, the Caucasus and Central Asia, were bound to become a battleground for influence among these countries, and that it was incumbent upon the United States to get behind them, to get in that battle and win it. And what she argued was the way to do it was to help make them economically independent, and then by extension, politically independent. And the way to do that was to build a pipeline, an oil pipeline independent of Russia. And so was born American policy, getting behind that region, right there on the spot. And this pipeline, it's the same one we talked about earlier, came online last year. It's shipping 1 million barrels a day of oil. And it has provided breathing space, political breathing space for this part of the Caspian region, the Caucasus side. And it happened right in the nick of time, as your speakers yesterday described, Russia, this resurgent, reassertive Russia on the world scene. These states now have some leverage against that. I'm going to move now into the concluding part, which is about what's going on right now. Russia has shown itself to continue to be a consummate player of pipeline politics, and it's done so by controlling this side of the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan having the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world, and Kazakhstan having 3 of the 10 largest oil and natural gas fields in the world. And it's continued to strangle their exports. And a oil man, one of these American oil men in Kazakhstan, gave me a rule of thumb for understanding what does that mean? What prism do you use to understand that? And the way he put it, this very colorful way. Generally, if a man is holding a knife to your throat, he wants something. What does Russia want? Well, when Putin is going around the world and getting into these scraps, with these blunt statements of his, and the moves that he's made with the oil industry, taking it under his control and so forth, he is following in a long line of Russian leaders who crave international respect and who resent that they don't get it. And he has proposed a series of pipelines to project that power. Out of this policy, the irony is that it's not the United States that has learned the lesson that power in that region and into Europe comes out of control of the flow of natural gas and oil. Putin learned it. Putin has proposed a series of oil and natural gas pipelines that would harness this tremendous store of energy, oil and natural gas, in this region and on into Russia, and then project it into Europe. And one of the pipelines would go from Turkmenistan, getting all of its natural gas, into Kazakhstan and getting its natural gas, and combine it, let's see, okay, and combine it with Russia's, and then send it, this is, there it goes, send it into Europe through Nord Stream, Northern Europe, the Nord Stream natural gas pipeline, into Southern Europe through the South Stream pipeline. The objective here being to capture more of the European energy market. Russia already controls more than 30% of the natural gas and oil supply into Europe. And there's a debate right now in Europe. Critics of Russia say that this is a worrying thing, that Russia already controls 30 or 35% of the oil and natural gas supply in Europe. And what does it mean that these pipelines are going to come online and it's going to control more? That Russia is buying up oil and natural gas installations in Eastern and Central Europe. That the head of the Northern pipeline is the former Chancellor of Germany, Gerhard Schroeder. He's an employee of Gazprom. The outcome of the construction of these pipelines would further keep the east side of the Caspian apart from the rest of the world, and it would make it would strangle the diversification, energy diversification in Europe. For my own 11 years in that region, I've got my own worries. I saw in that time there, when I lived there, that in fact Russia did use its petropower, the way we've described, as a blunt instrument to get its way in the Caucasus and Central Asia. And it seems to me that it behooves one to take out an insurance policy just in case. And that insurance policy could be this. This has been a pipeline that's been proposed for a long time. In the 1990s, it couldn't be built because the president of Turkmenistan was demanding a $500 million bribe to make that happen. He's dead now, and his successor just might agree to do that. If that pipeline were built, and that's a natural gas line, and then an oil pipeline were combined with it, what you would have is a unit of Central Asia and the Caucasus linked to the West through, well, Azerbaijan, Georgia, on into Turkey and into Europe. and you would provide breathing space, the same political breathing space, for this side of the Caspian.